Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Okay.
tell us kind of what is UX like.
Okay. Well, a little bit about myself. So I've been working in UX for 25 years or so. So I've seen uh, the field develop and grow and change. So
Oh
what
yeah.
we thought of as UX was different 20 years ago than it is now.
Hmm.
But basically, UX is just a collection of different tools and methods and kind of like lenses on a problem that you can use to ensure that your product and service, whatever it is that you're doing, will work for the people who you're designing for, and that would get you product market fit.
Okay, so it really does come down to that experience and product market fit, and yeah, giving some guidance, yeah, of how do you accomplish that. That's what you're. It's like a toolbox in a lot of ways. Is that?
Yeah. So a lot of people think about UX as what are the colors, what fonts do I put in here, how rounded should my buttons be, and that's part of it, but that's a small part. So let me share my screen real quick.
Sure.
Let's see right here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so this is like a diagram of the levels of UX. So like any model, it's imperfect. So you can always, well, what about this? What about this? What other thing? Well, yeah, sure. We can have a discussion about that. But it's good to give this overview that UX incorporates all of these different things. So I'll go through this very quickly. You have a lot of people talk about UX, UI design. If you notice on this, UI is a very small part of what UX is. It's the surface. It's this visual design part. And as you go down, you get more and more abstract. So this model talks about the skeleton and lists all these different things: interface design, navigation design, information design. Then it goes down a level further to information architecture and interaction design. Then a little further into scope, functional and content requirements. And then at the bottom here, the base of everything is strategy, understanding user needs and business goals. And, this model is imperfect. I'm really big on the context of use of the environment in which the people using your product or service operate in. I focus more on these lower levels. Earlier in my career, I started with this part at the top, and I can still do it, but I'm much more engaged in this the full scope of what UX is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One question, even before we kind of dive into the different stages, a lot of times, just like we think about surface, a lot of times when people first hear UX, they're thinking more on the UI side. But also, even if you think you read out like, oh, skeleton, it's like, okay, it's interface, navigation, but even down to structure, it's like information architecture. It still kind of feels like there's always a screen involved. But I know that UX encompasses interactions and experiences that don't just involve a screen and a window. So is that like, can you speak to that a little bit? Like, so say someone is doing, maybe they're doing consulting, and so they don't have always a screen. They're doing a lot more person-to-person type of business, or maybe they deliver a service. How does UX, especially as you're talking about kind of that lower chunk, how does that apply to those forms of businesses where they're not making an app or something like that?
So the bottom three parts here are going to apply. They're not just digital. They apply to service and out in the real world. No matter what kind of a product that you're doing, you need to understand the strategy around it. You need to understand what are your requirements around that. Information architecture has to do with how you're organizing information around your business. So let's say if you're a coffee shop,
Okay.
there's a strong information architecture component to that. Like you have a menu, you have
Right.
the way you talk to your customers, and all that is things you need to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, skeleton in this model, this is very digital centric, but you could apply skeleton to service design.
Okay.
That instead of saying interface design, you could talk, well, what is your process for accomplishing what you want to accomplish? Navigation doesn't only apply to a computer screen. It's
Right.
you get around an environment. And information design applies to service as well.
No, that's great. No, that's a good way to name that. Service design is, all part of that UX universe there, and can be really helpful to a lot of type of businesses. We see people starting in this age where they're offering their smarts and they're selling their expertise in those different kind of business offerings. And so, well, let's jump in to talking through some of the different stages of business and how does UX apply in those. That sound good? Well, let's talk about the discovery stage. So the discovery stage, this is where we're really refining, testing, and validating what is that offer. So you think about, again, businesses solve problems for customers. So, but what is that offer that we're presenting to the audience? So it's designing that offer, it's testing, it's validating, it's refining that offer so that at the end of the discovery stage, you have a validated offer. And by validated, it's like, hey, we know that the ideal customer will pay money for it because we've had some people pay money for it. Not just that say they will, but actually do the thing. And so it's shaping and validating that offer. So when someone is in that stage where they've figured out who they're solving and the problem that they're trying to solve for them, but they're saying, okay, what am I offering them, and at what cost? What are some of the questions that they should be asking related to UX in that stage, in the discovery stage?
Okay, so a question that they should ask related to UX is, how might we test and validate our problem and solution with real people?
Okay.
So you can build or you can create some kind of a visualization or prototype, but then you need to take it and remember the personas you identified. You need to go and find people who align with those personas and do another interview with them around this idea or visualization of your offer. So what can this visualization be?
Okay.
It can be just a little sketch. I don't recommend that you put a lot of time and effort into building out a full-scale prototype.
Right.
At this point, you need to keep everything flexible and get the let's say that the language you're using is, we're going to make a prototype and we're going to test it with users.
Okay.
What's a prototype? A prototype can be a sketch on the back of a napkin. That's really enough to capture a heck of a lot of information about your offer from people. And then the thing that you can do is you can take the feedback that they give you and you can use that to refine your very basic prototype. And it can still just be a drawing, a sketch, a visualization that doesn't have to have any interactivity behind it. And you can use in this iterative method of refining your offer and kind of validating, I think I have the right problem here, but maybe I don't. And when you're doing this, this additional research / testing, you need to stay open, and maybe you don't have the problem properly defined. You need to be prepared to modify your offer during this stage.
No, that's really good. I like that, and I think that's a great call out there, and because it is, even I love that you said, hey, it can just be on the back of a napkin. is helpful, because I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we can try and spend way too much time perfecting that napkin, getting our napkin just right, so that we're like, oh, I got it perfect, versus like, okay, let's just get it
Yeah.
rough
Yeah.
sketched and see, does it resonate? Does it land? Is it compelling? If, let's say if you were my ideal client and we were having a conversation and I was, sketching out my offer on the back of a napkin, and how am I trying to read you to discern, is it resonating, kind of in that live testing and validating? What am I looking for to know, do I have the right offer, or do I need to pivot if I'm an entrepreneur kind of in this validating stage?
Okay. So, the questions you ask depend on how far along you are in this iterative process of refining your prototype / offer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say this is your first go about. It's kind of questions. It's like, I have this idea. Let me explain this to you. Show the back of the napkin sketch and kind of go through it with them. And then I would ask 3 questions.
Okay.
What do you like about this? What works for you about this? What do you not like about this? What things in this don't work for you? Or what problems do you see in this? And then a question around how would you improve this? How would you yes and this? How would you make this better?
Yeah.
And then just be quiet and let them answer the question and go on. And then at the right time, ask some follow-up questions.
Okay.
And then I would ask them a question that'd be a little more quantitative. On a scale of 1 through 5, how likely would you? And one of these might be, how likely would you, if this were a product, how likely would you recommend this to a friend? That could be one question. Another question might be, how likely would you be to actually pay money for this?
Mm-hmm.
And then how much would you pay for this?
Yeah.
These are early stages.
Yeah. And that's a good call out of, these are even the early part of that discovery stage, when you're just, like you said, it's iterative. You're going to design that offer, do what you just said, ask those kind of questions, refine it. And then it seems like your questions are going to change though as you go along. And maybe towards the end, there's going to be less of the, what do you not like about it, and how much would you pay for it? It would shift more to like, hey, here's what it is. Would you like to sign up? And you're actually kind of reading it's almost more like a sales conversation, but done with a mindset of I'm still validating, and I'm still observing, and I'm still looking for feedback, but I'm actually asking it in more of kind of a live setting, where I'm not just saying, would you like to buy this? Or would you consider buying this potentially, but do you want to buy it right now? And so how, from a UX standpoint, as you kind of move through that discovery stage and that validating to, the real validation is someone goes, yeah, I want to buy that. Where can I sign up?
What state is the product at when you consider you're at the end of discovery?
Yeah, so that's where you have your offer. At the end of discovery, your offer is validated because you've had some customers say yes to purchasing it.
Customers who have purchased your product.
So, yeah, or could be pre-ordered your product. So like, say you're doing something that you're like, hey, we're gonna, like, let's say going back to our existential example of a leadership consultant who's helping lead team leadership within an organization say, hey, I'm going to do a workshop. Would you like to, let's book you for next month. So maybe you're still even like on the back end sorting out how the workshop is totally going to run, but you could pre-sell it in a sense of say, hey, I'll sign you up for next month. But you kind of figured out like, oh, they want a workshop versus they want a retainer, or they want, you figured out kind of what that offer is.
Okay. So these early questions that you ask, you're going to continue to ask those the entire way through.
Okay.
But at a certain point, you're going to start going from a back of the napkin concept to some kind of representation of your product,
like a one-pager or something like that. Yeah,
a one-pager to actually a diagram showing your process of engaging.
Okay. Yeah.
And so let's say let's go with this team building consultancy.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a process for engaging, you want to try it out.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's early stages of that are you have some kind of a representation of what your engagement process is, and
Mm-hmm.
you get like a couple of buddies together and let's do some role playing. I want you to role play through how I'm thinking I want to engage with customers in my team building consultancy. Pretend like you are here. You be the CTO, you be the CFO, you be the COO, and we're doing a meeting, and I'm trying to engage you to contract with me.
Okay.
And then go through your spiel, your process. What I'm describing, you probably want to videotape it, and then afterwards, you may want to talk with the people who are role playing, and have a set of like questions for them to answer, open-ended questions for them to answer around. But basically, it's around what worked and what didn't work. Is there anything? Was there anything extraneous in this process? Was there anything missing in this process when we went through this role-playing scenario?
Yeah.
And then with what are the things you liked about this? What are the things you didn't like? What are the things that worked well? What are the things that didn't work well? What are the opportunities to improve this? And then based on how I presented what this consultancy would offer, how much would you pay for it? And then maybe you had questions on how would you structure that payment or that into that too.
Yeah. And I wonder, is there anything that would keep you from saying yes? Is there any objections you have, which you probably wouldn't ask in an actual sales conversation, but if we're still kind of in this research aspect of it. Yeah. Okay, so this is really helpful thinking about what are some of the questions they're tackling. When we think about in this discovery stage where someone's trying to validate their offer, what are some like metrics they should be paying attention to? It seems like it's still very qualitative rather than quantitative. It's not like you're running ads and it's what's your click-through rate type of thing. But in these conversations, are there some metrics or things like that would be helpful at this discovery stage?
Yeah. So let's see. It really depends on what your product or service is.
Okay, tell me more.
So one thing, like if there's an existing way of doing things, you can collect metrics on that existing way of doing things related to the time it takes, the number of steps, the satisfaction that people have, or even just identifying where in the current way of doing things the pain points are. Then if you have your product, it's a new way of doing things, you can collect those similar metrics. Time, number of steps, are the same pain points present? Have they been alleviated? What's the satisfaction level of people who go through the new way of doing things? Does it fit in their expectation? I started with some quantitative measures. Now I'm getting into some more qualitative. What else did I write? That's that. I think those are some of the metrics that you can measure. And then as you get later into a later stage, there may be other quantitative measures that you can capture.
That makes a lot of sense. They get more concrete as the business matures, for sure.
Right. So like you have messaging, and your messaging is going to be refined. You could see if they have comprehension of it. So this is what my messaging is. What do you think this means?
Yeah. Yeah, which gets us a little bit more into that adoption stage, which we'll talk about here in a second. Yeah, but that totally makes sense. So someone who's still in this discovery stage, talked about some of the questions, some of the metrics that they need to pay attention to. What kind of expertise or resources do they want to connect themselves with at this discovery stage?
Okay, so you still want somebody who the UX research capabilities.
Okay.
You still want the person with the facilitator capabilities, because in refining your offer, you're basically iteratively going out and you're you're making something, you're going out and showing it and testing it, and you need to come back and take the learnings and incorporate that into your offer. You can do that through design thinking workshops.
Okay.
And you need somebody who can do that stuff. Okay. Depending on your product or service, you may need somebody who's skilled in service design, who's not solely focused on the digital UX design. You need to, as you refine your offer, you need somebody who's skilled in information architecture, somebody who's skilled in wireframing and prototyping. And towards the later stages of this, you need to bring in somebody. I think during discovery, you need to start thinking about your branding and marketing, and you need somebody who can take that and express it in your user experience, and that's more of the surface UI stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
you're going to get to enough surface to be able to sell it, where it seems like, yeah, where it's a high enough fidelity that it's like someone knows they're not just looking at the back of the napkin, but they're like, oh, I could actually buy this today. Like that it has that level of quality and clarity and refinement in a sense, right?
Yeah, and this might not be, I mean, this isn't UX, but it does sound like that during discovery, at a certain point, you need to start actually building something. And so there may be a whole range of skills related to building it.
Totally. Yeah. If you're developing an app or something like that, you're certainly doing that simultaneously. All right. Well, let's kind of wrap up here and talk about like the overall, like, we've talked about each of these stages here. But if someone's just chiming in for one of these videos talking about an individual stage, give me just kind of like a recap as we've gone from existential all the way through saturation and then kind of an event. Just give me kind of a recap view of the role of UX as a business grows and matures.
So the role of UX across all these different stages is really very similar. Mm-hmm. This has to do with how formalized and if it's fractional or full-time permanent roles who are doing it. Mm-hmm. And just what goes across all of the stages are things like doing user research to find out about your customers and the environment in which they work, mm-hmm. and then documenting that in an actionable way.
Okay.
And then, I described that and then visualizing things based on that, visualizing your service or your product, and then kind of refining that in the later stages as wireframes, as comps, as prototypes, and then continually iteratively testing and validating that you're on the right track, mm-hmm. or that you're identifying where you need to shift as your customers or market shift.
Yeah, that makes sense. So no, I appreciate you walking through each of these stages. This has been really helpful, and I encourage anyone watching these videos, if you're catching just one of the stages, maybe watch the two adjacent stages, the one before and the one after that you're currently in, if you haven't watched those already, because it's really helpful to get kind of a picture as you've really fleshed that out. So.
Well, and I would add, after
Yeah.
watching these, if you have any questions, reach out, and I'd love to meet and chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Andy, you've been a great resource, and I'm excited to see how you continue to help this community of founders grow their businesses.